Good evening and welcome to another session of Ideas at Work and Beyond. This evening we have State Senate candidate John Hartwell, who's coming to share his positions on issues related to the state of Connecticut. He's going to answer the question, why does a well-educated man who's seemingly very prosperous and happy want to run for the Connecticut State Senate? Joining me, in addition to John Hartwell, is the first selectman of Ridgefield, Mr. Rudy Marconi, and I was hoping we could get a picture of this because that's Rudy in a colonial outfit there on the front page of the Ridgefield Press. He's the one in the middle. Is that a salute or a wave? Really?
That's, well, if you look closely, it's a wave.
It's more of a wave. And then I see you have Andy Bodner.
Andy,
focus
Barbara.
that a little bit if we could. Barbara Manners, Dye Masters, and
Joan Plock.
And Joan Plock. We're gonna work on the focus on that a little bit. But we have Rudy Marconi who's joining us, and also a special guest is Al Robinson. Don't adjust your television sets. We will get the focus right. There we go. From right to left, Barbara Manners, Dye Masters, Rudy Marconi, a very smart vest. Was that hat hot on that day?
Extremely warm.
Extremely warm. And then you have Andy Bodner there. He sort of had a knicker thing going, and then Joan Plock. But anyways, just to plug Ridgefield a little bit, Ridgefield celebrated its 300th anniversary. 1708, some people from Norwalk came up and settled. 300 years later, here we are, and Mr. Marconi is the first selectman there. And also, special guest joining us, Al Robinson,
Great to be here.
who is a part of a force to be reckoned with HatCityBLOGs.com.
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug, and hopefully the show will be on as well. But anyways, the show is all about you. Why in the world, you have an MBA from Yale,
right.
You've worked for Chase Bank.
Yep.
What is motivating you to run for state senate?
Well, Marty, I've been interested in politics all my life. I have an undergraduate degree in political science. I started my first campaign with Eugene McCarthy back in 1968, and I've worked on and off in campaigns all my life. So I've always had a deep interest in politics. This is my first time as a candidate. But certainly in the last few years, I've thought that the country, and the more I find out about the state, is somewhat off track. I think that things could be done a lot better. And so I wanted to bring the experience that I've got as a business person, the experience I've had in living in various places in the world, to bear on politics here in Connecticut. So I think I have a lot to offer. As I say, this is my first time as a candidate, and I'm having a good time.
You're enjoying it?
I am.
You're enjoying the process?
I'm enjoying the process. It's exhausting, but I'm enjoying it.
Okay, now do you have some sort of a campaign manager, a consultant that's relentlessly telling you to knock on doors and you got to be out?
I have several people who are relentlessly telling me a lot of things, yes.
And how's that working out for you?
Again, it's a first-time campaign, so I'm feeling my way along, seeing what works, what doesn't work, and trying to get out and meet as many people as possible.
Okay. Now, would you say, we're going to talk a little bit about health care,
right?
Affordability of health care. We're going to talk about a bill that apparently was vetoed by the governor, also the train line, and you want to talk a little bit about smart growth. And by the way, the phone number here is 203-792-4101. 792-4101. This is live television. You call, we'll put you on the air if you have a question for the candidate or anyone else on panel. But is there a driving issue, a wrong that you wanted to see righted, an issue that you think isn't being properly handled in Connecticut that's motivating you to run?
Well, I start off looking at Fairfield County, which I think is not getting its fair share of the revenues in the state. I think that up in Hartford, they look at Fairfield County as being the ATM, and they want to take money from us, but they don't want to give us much back. Okay. And we are the economic engine of the state. Without Fairfield County, the state would be facing very difficult times. Mm-hmm. And in order, if you have a business, you know that you have to invest. You have to continually invest in a business in order to keep it going. Mm-hmm. And what I see is that we're not making the investments in Fairfield County that we should. For example, in the Danbury train line, which I think we need substantial upgrades on. We need to fix Route 7. Down in the part of the district where I live in Westport, There's a lot that needs to be done with I-95 and with the train line down there. So there are things that have to be done, and I don't see the state moving as quickly as they should to take care of Fairfield County.
Okay. Do you have any statistics on that? Do you have, I know in the town of Ridgefield, we'll talk about, you know, how much money, how many millions of dollars or whatever it is, the town of Ridgefield sends to Hartford, and how much of that we get back in return. Do you have any statistics?
Actually, I think Rudy probably knows those numbers.
Yeah, we get about 5 cents on the dollar returned to us.
5 cents on the dollar.
Right. And John hit the nail on the head. You know, Ridgefield, amongst other Fairfield County communities, sends a bulk of the revenue to the state, and we need to have the Branchville line. I've been pushing for that for years, and John, I'm glad to see, is running and supporting that. It's an issue that we need to look at, and especially taking into consideration the current state of affairs with the cost of gas. More and more people, Marty, are looking for public transportation, and we're behind the curve. We seem, for some reason, in the state of Connecticut to be as slow as molasses in bringing a concept to actual reality, to getting it built. It's just not getting done. And hopefully with John in Hartford, we can realize that something like this could become a reality in the very near future.
Yeah. You know, that's one thing that's sort of, well, if you want to call it that, a blessing in disguise related to the high gas prices, which if anyone saw last week's show, went on a bit of a rant. Is that up on the web yet?
It'll be up soon. It'll be up
okay, but I want to look, because we're trying to defend these caribou, but you know.
You have the caribou here today?
Yeah, we actually do. If we could get my guy on the camera there, we have a picture of the caribou that they're saying are being run out in Anwar, but really aren't. But with the price of oil going up, I don't know if we can get a tight shot of that. But with the price of oil going up, I feel like we need to start drilling. We now just need to start drilling now, and we need to start drilling in Anwar. That's the caribou herd where they're saying we cannot drill because of the caribou. Oh, and look at that. We have a copy of the caribou from last week. There's one less caribou up there. We don't need the 5th Congressional District. But the point being, high gasoline prices, to your point about the train, are forcing more and more people to leave their cars at home, carpool, or take mass transportation. So this is playing right into your hand.
That's absolutely true. And you know, there's not a lot of oil to be drilled in Connecticut. So there's not much we can do here.
But there is a lot in Anwar.
Well,
and there's also a lot of caribou. There were 3,000, now they're 23,000. So you can tell from the picture.
God bless them. It's like the deer.
Yeah, they're fine. They're fine. Sorry, go ahead.
Gasoline prices are out of sight.
Yeah.
And we clearly are needing to change what we do as a society. I don't think that prices are going to go up, prices are going to come down. I think, in fact, in the last few days, we've seen prices come down a little bit. I don't think that they're going to return to the pre-war levels. Remember, when we went into Iraq, they were about $38 a barrel, and now it's over $140 or $135 a barrel. That kind of premium on the price of gasoline is going to be there as long as we're in the Middle East. And there's nothing that we can do here in Connecticut about that. Additionally, we've got the new economies in China and in India. I've worked in India. I know what's happening there. I see the middle class exploding in India. They are going to want cars. They're going to need more electricity. They're going to want all of the things that we have. And so that there's this huge requirement for energy around the world. And in this country, as you say, you've got an SUV, I've got an SUV.
Yeah.
It's very expensive to fill those up.
$100 to fill up my tank of gas.
$100. It cost me almost that much. I put in regular.
Okay.
So what's going to happen here? Over time, I think people are going to change their patterns. You know, there was a poll out just last week from the Quinnipiac that said that lots and lots of people are now looking at buying hybrids and fuel-efficient cars.
Right.
Over time, that's going to make a big difference.
Right.
Short run, I think we have to look for ways to move people onto public transportation. Actually, that's not as short run as I would like.
I mean, have you noticed, or are you aware of ridership going up on this line from
absolutely.
Branchville?
I've been out at the train stations in the morning talking to commuters.
Okay.
And what I've heard from them, for example, is the parking lots are filling up much earlier than they used to because there are more people on the trains.
Yeah.
And again, that's a trend that's going to continue.
Yeah. I was reading the New York Times. You can't get a seat on a bus in the New York City.
Yeah.
You know, people are.
I've had several people come into the office complaining that they could not find a parking place over at Katona because they no longer want to drive to New York and wanted to know what I was going to do about that. And as you know, we have the shuttle from Ridgefield. That ridership is up 26%.
They park in the Jesse Lee
Church. We have a park and ride lot. That ridership is up 26% over April of '07. And as a result, we're needing to go to another church to see if we can use part of that parking lot. We're putting on 2 and 3 buses for single commutes,
so that's
single trains.
A shuttle bus from Ridgefield where they
the
take
Jesse Lee, right
down to Katona,
right to the Katona station.
So they get on the train from
right,
there.
right,
So.
and it's quite successful, and we find more and more people are taking advantage of it. But you're right. Now is the time, as John, you asked the question of John. This is playing into the hand of trying to get people to use public transportation and get cars off the road. Can we drill for more oil? Sure. But are we going to keep building more cars? Are we going to keep building more roads? Where does it end? And I think now's an opportunity to take advantage of the current situation and change the psychology of many commuters to let them know that it is okay to use public transportation.
Is there a reason why... I used to go to New York a lot, and from Danbury, I know one thing: I would never take the New Haven line because it was such an annoying trip. Getting off in South Norwalk, waiting 20 minutes. I always made the case to travel over to Brewster, park my car there.
That's the problem, right?
What could you do? Both of you guys can do to take care of the problems with the New Haven line. I mean, for as long as I remember, I've always heard problems about the New Haven line, and I've also heard suggestions that maybe we should make a rail to connect the Danbury line up to Brewster, connected to the Harlem line.
Right.
Well, there's 2 things that are happening. First is that the state has moved to buy new cars for the main line, for the New Haven line. There's 300 on order. They'll start being delivered at either the end of 2009 or the beginning of 2010. There'll be 10 new cars come on every month until they get the 300, and they've got an option for another 80 cars as well beyond that. Depending on how many of the old cars they retire, and they won't tell us yet what they actually plan to do, we could see a 40, 50, maybe even a 60% increase in capacity on the main line. And one thing I would like to see with that new capacity is to create a subway-like service between New Haven and Greenwich so that you wouldn't need to worry about what the train schedules say. You could just simply go to the train station and catch a train. I think they'll have that many cars to do that. It'd need a bit of change down in Greenwich so you could turn the trains around, but you don't need to run every train all the way down to New York. Secondly, we also need to do some major work on the Danbury line. Now, you talked about going to South Norwalk and having to change trains. In fact, there are 3 trains in the morning that go all the way down to New York. You don't have to change, but only 3. Whereas if you went over to the Harlem line, you can take all of the trains down to New York and you not have to change. One of the things that the Danbury line is lacking is a control system that actually would be in the 20th century, much less the 21st. They still throw the signals by hand on the Danbury line. Yes, it's amazing.
Stop the train, conductor gets out.
Really?
Throw the signal. So, and for that reason, they can only
take on coal and shovel it into the.
They would if they could.
Okay.
So the only thing they can do now is run one train in up, and then that same train back. You can't run trains in opposite directions, even though there are places where the trains can pass. So what we need to do is put in that control system. They tell us that in fact is on the way, and that in the next 3 years that control system would be put in place at a cost of, the latest I heard was
54 million.
54, I think.
Going up?
Going up. I heard 80 million actually. So if we put on a new control system, we could run trains in both directions. We have new cars on the main line. We could actually increase traffic on the branch line as well and make commuting much.
It seems like something that should have been done a long time ago.
It obviously should have been done a long time
Al,
ago.
that's a great question.
Sounds
because
like Route
statement.
7 expansion.
Well,
hold on one second.
go ahead.
Caller, you're on the air? Caller, are you there? If we missed you, call back. Sorry about that. Yeah, but you're saying this should have been done a long time ago.
Well, you started to say we should have gotten started on this back in Jim Maloney's days when Ridgefield was part of the 5th. Danbury still is, obviously. He was successful in achieving to get a grant of $2 million to study electrification of the Branchville line. We are now, just now, entering into phase 2 of the study.
Right.
And that's one of the problems I think that exists in Hartford is, as I mentioned earlier, getting a project from design to reality, getting the job done, and it just doesn't happen in the DOT.
Well, let me expand. It seems like it gets done in like areas like Hartford or New Haven, but these smaller areas where they'll just take all your money, you're getting 5 cents back, and you're not getting anything out of your dollar.
Right.
No,
that's right.
No.
Especially
right.
on this line. Now, New Canaan has got very good train service, but here on this line we don't, and we should. We should have exactly the same service.
All right, let me just in this conversation be the devil's advocate, because you're running for political office, and I've seen it done with traffic on 95, with expanding the Route 7, corridor, expanding the road on Route 7, and now with trains. Everyone doesn't like the congestion. Everyone's frustrated by this. As a politician seeking votes, you're coming in and promising, vote for me, I'm going to get this all taken care of. Yet there were countless public servants before you that have maybe said the same thing, but weren't able to get it done. They were talking about expanding Route 7 to 4 lanes. They started that back in the early 70s. It's
48.
only now, in 1948. It's only now. So, I mean,
Right.
What more can you tell the voters other than, boy, these trains are really a problem? When I get there, I'm going to be, one of 50 state senators. I'm going to be, and we're going to change all this. What more can you say?
One of 36.
One of 36.
Yeah.
Okay.
A couple of things. The first is that the political environment is changing rapidly. You may remember that Governor Rowland tried to close down the Danbury line. He actually wanted to take it out of business.
True.
Thankfully, Governor Rell doesn't see it that way, and she, in fact, was a major proponent of the new train cars on Metro North on the main line.
What did the capacity increase with those new cars, you said?
We don't know for sure because DOT isn't telling us, but it could be as much as 50–60%. I've been told
Over
that by over the capacity now.
When all these cars are online.
When all these cars are online.
And do they have an estimated time of arrival for that?
Starting in 2 years and taking another 3 years or so for them to come online. It's 10 a month.
Pencil in 2020.
They have to build these cars.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry.
Pencil it.
So,
yeah, pencil.
So the other thing I think is important here is that I am a Democrat, and as I think people know, the state Senate and the state House are run by Democrats.
Yeah.
And the incumbent, Judy Friedman, was a Republican, and however much she said, she wasn't in the room when a lot of the decisions were made. Right. If I'm elected, I will be. So I will have a bigger voice for the people of this district because I will be working with the majority party.
Okay, again, let me be the devil's advocate, because you come on the show and you say, oh, it's terrible, we get 5 cents on the dollar back in Ridgefield for our taxes. Fairfield County is not getting its value for the taxes they send to Hartford. Who do you think's spending all the money? It's the Democrats that are in charge up there that are spending all the money with these pork barrel projects in Bridgeport and New Haven and other places. You're just going to join the party.
Last time
what are you going to do that's going to be different?
Last time I saw it was Governor Rell who was signing those bills. So I think
actually, Governor Rell proposed an incredible tax increase. We had Dave Cappiello on the show last week. The Republican Party, the clear-thinking Republican Party, took her to task for that, and she stepped back from it. But when she proposed it, the Democrats were applauding her tax increase proposal and wanted to do more.
I don't know about that, Mr. Heiser.
Are you going to tell us that when you go to Hartford, you're not going to be like that? No. You don't think that that's accurate?
I know that the proposal by the governor would have cost Ridgefield an additional $18 million in taxes.
Okay.
I can tell you that.
And so the Democrats didn't welcome that?
Absolutely not. This Democrat didn't. I can tell you that. Getting 5 cents back on the dollar to put through a tax increase impacting Ridgefield is $18 million. Only again supports what John said in that Fairfield County's carrying the state.
Okay, but Rudy, if that's the case, there was a debate on taxes in Hartford. There was a Democrat proposal that was on the table that I believe was vetoed by the governor, or wasn't allowed to go through, and then the veto wasn't sustained. What was that Democrat tax increase proposal going to cost the town of Ridgefield?
I don't know. I never heard of one. I didn't get a number on that, to be very honest with you.
So
never did I get one.
Is Democrats, send more Democrats to Hartford, and they're going to lower your taxes.
Marty, you're a wizard at doing that, putting words in people's mouths. I didn't say that at all. First, you were talking to John. You had asked him a question, never gave him an opportunity to answer it as to what he'll do in the Senate. Okay, but you're asking me, do we send more Democrats? I think we need to send the people that are going to get the job done for our town. That's why I'm here tonight to support John.
Okay.
I believe he's going to get the job done for Ridgefield. We had years of leadership from various parties, and you can call Democrats Republican. I have less of a tendency to look at a Democrat or Republican. I look at what have we gotten. Not a lot. And we have some serious issues we're confronting, and the major issue we're talking tonight, or one of the major issues, is transportation. We cannot continue to build roads, drill more oil wells, and just feed the system. We have to get people to change their psychology. We need to expand that line, not just to Danbury. We need to move it up into Milford. Absolutely. To beginning create a human resource for all the businesses that are building in Norwalk, in the Merritt 7 area, in Stamford. We need to move people down into that area. If we expect to do that, to grow that area from an economic development position and to be able to supply the labor market through vehicular traffic, it isn't going to happen. Yeah. We need to expand our public transportation.
And then after this call, you'll have all the time in the world. Caller, you on the air? Caller, are you there?
Yes.
Yes.
Marty, how are you? This is Larry
good.
from Danbury. How are you today?
Good, very good. Thanks for calling.
No problem. I have a question for Rudy and John, and this concerns the Danbury line. As you know, Marty, I work in Ridgefield. I live in Danbury. And many times when I want to go to the city, I would much prefer to go by train as opposed to by car. Especially with the high cost of gas right now, I'd much prefer to go to Branchville, to go to Cannondale. If the line is, you know, I know it's not going to be closed, but if it is extended, the infrastructure, specifically the parking at both Branchville and Cannondale, is really not that substantial. So if additional trains are added, I was wondering if there was a plan to add additional parking space or provide other infrastructure at the stations which would allow for increased ridership.
Okay. Thank you for the call.
A great question, and the answer is it's part of the study for Phase 2. Rudy mentioned a Phase 2 study a moment ago. It's just kicking off. It's supposed to be finished in a couple of years. They're looking at several things, one of which is electrification of the line, which I actually don't support because I think it's too expensive. They're looking at...
Can you just explain that? What do you mean by electric? It's going to turn into electric trains as opposed
They
to...
would install a catenary system overhead and run electric wires.
Right. Huh. To make it like the main line.
Right.
The second thing they're looking at is extending the line up to New Milford, which would require 3 new train stations along the way, one in North Danbury, one in Brookfield, and one in New Milford.
And you support that?
I absolutely do, 100%. For exactly why Rudy was talking about a moment ago, to get people who are living up in that direction down to jobs here in Ridgefield or in Wilton at Route 7 or down in Norwalk or Stamford or Bridgeport. There's a lot of traffic on Route 7 every day. In fact, the other day I was at the Branchville station. I was talking to commuters. One of the people that I met was a man who lived in New Milford. He drives to Branchville, gets on the train, this is every day, and then takes a train to Stamford to go to work. Okay. Now, RBS, the Royal Bank of Scotland, is putting in 6,000 new jobs into Stamford. Yeah. A lot of those jobs are going to be sort of mid-level and lower-level people, young people starting off, you know, clerks and people working in the trading floor, etc. They're going to not live in Stamford or Greenwich or Westport. They're going to be living further away in Stratford, or they're going to be living up in New Milford. They're going to be living places where they're going to need to commute. So those 6,000 new jobs, which is a huge economic plus for Stamford and for Fairfield County, at the same time is a huge burden, additional burden on the transportation system. So the gentleman who just called a moment ago said, well, what about the parking? That's also in the study. They'll be looking at parking. In addition, they'll be looking at one other thing, which is called transit-oriented development. And if you think about, for example, Georgetown, with the wire mill project that's in the planning stages down there, they're going to take an area that is what we call a brownfield. It's an old industrial site. It's got pollution there. It's got old buildings that need to be cleaned up. It was closed down years ago. It was a factory.
It's like a wire mill.
It was a wire mill. Yeah. It's over 100 years old. In fact, they've got at least one building on that property that's 150 years old. They're renovating it. They're going to put in mixed-use housing. They're going to put in commercial. They're going to put in apartments. They're going to put in a brand new train station. Going to build a train station from scratch in Georgetown, and they'll have 1,000 housing units that'll be able to walk to the train. and we'll have restaurants there and you know, various kinds of shopping and places to work, creating a new little village around the train station. This is called transit-oriented development, and as part of the new study, they're going to be looking at the various train stations along the line to see what else could be done in Danbury and in Bethel and in around Branchville and Cannondale, Wilton, all up and down the line to take a look at that.
Oh, you talked earlier about smart growth. Is that related?
That is smart growth. Smart growth says, let's put in new development where we already have the infrastructure, and not take up virgin land, you know, not take up more farmland, not take up more open space where we have to put in huge septic systems or run sewer systems and where we don't have transportation. We want to concentrate the growth where we already have the infrastructure.
Okay. Caller, are you there? We had a caller. If you called, please call back. Tell us a little bit more about smart growth. Where do you, because you see that as Fairfield County wide.
I see that as...
And you're a Yale MBA, so I know you've given this some thought.
It's to me, we talked at the beginning of the show about changing the way we live, and getting less dependent upon cars and more dependent on public transportation. Smart growth plays into that.
Okay. Caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, my question concerns schools and education. Property taxes keeps going up, and the state continues to impose unfunded mandates on the schools. And what can we do to get our fair share of state aid to education?
Interesting question. Thank you. Yeah, along those lines, you know, when we compare, for example, Ridgefield, there's 169 municipalities in Connecticut, and there's this association that puts out these studies. You know, what how much percent do we get money back for our education budget? Towns, well, Ridgefield, it's something like 2%, 3%. Towns like Bridgeport, New Haven, they get 89, 90, 92% state funding. When you look at, I know our budget, the town budget is somewhere around 25, 30 million. The school budget is 76 million.
Right.
So the vast majority of real estate taxes go to fund the school budget.
Yes.
And that's where you have this massive redistribution of wealth in this state, where the cities are being funded for their education programs. What are you going to do regarding that? Is that system fine the way it is right now? Because it's certainly putting a burden on real estate taxes.
And I stood outside the polls in Ridgefield and in Reading and in Bethel as voters came in and voted down the budget that you approved.
And it was a modest thing. Well, what I thought, apparently I was wrong. 3.5% seemed modest. 1.9% passed overwhelmingly, so maybe we were wrong.
Right. So a couple of things here. The policy of the state is that the state should pay for 50% of school funding, and they don't. And there's a program called Payment in Lieu of Taxes that they're supposed to fund money to the towns, and they don't fund it the way they're supposed to. So this is one of the issues that Fairfield County is not getting its fair share on, and we have to work with the other people in the state to get that done.
Okay. We are going to take a break. Before we do, I just want to shamelessly plug on July 31st. We're going to have a sit-down debate between you and your opponent, Tony Boucher.
Yes.
It'll be right here.
Yep.
We will take calls.
Good.
I'm actually going to purchase one of those chess timers, you know, so we'll make sure everyone has the same time, but you won't be cut off. You'll be allowed to speak, although I may be verbose, but that's, you know, my nature.
Can I be Bobby Fischer if you be Boris Spassky?
Yeah, you can be mine. Yeah, you'll beat me at chess. But so we're looking forward to that. July 31st will be a sit-down debate. Please call in with your questions. It should be very, very interesting and very entertaining. We're going to take a break right now, and we're going to have some weather from our meteorologists and some other information, and we'll be right back. Thank you. All right.